there is a lot of interest in the distinctions in practice, attainments, or identifying with certain attainments, and being able to call yourself a sotapanna, an anagami, an arahant. So, but if you call yourself a sotapanna, for example, yet you still suffer.
Yeah.
So what?
I mean, yeah, it's quite normal that people would just sort of try to tailor and mold terms and terminologies to basically what they would want them to mean and be. That's just how the mind works. That's why the familiarity with the suttas is necessary, because if you read and see what the Buddha meant by sotapanna, then you realize, okay, so these are the qualifications. I said it before, I think, when I first read, I think it was Aya Kema. She had that paper on Sotapatti and the three fetters that I found online. I was still a layman, and it was quite, saying that it was watered down, it's an understatement, basically. She was saying that we are already sotapannas because we all know that rituals are empty. Bowing to a shrine means nothing. We all know that the Buddha was the greatest teacher, and we all know that modern science has proven that there is really no substance, like a substance of the self. And I remember thinking that, oh great, so I'm a sotapanna then. But then immediately I thought, well, from the suffering point of view, and being free from suffering, free from liability to suffering, what difference does it make then? And then you realize that type of sotapanna makes no difference, which then means that's not sotapatti, because the Buddha said what sotapatti is. 4 noble truths and freedom from suffering, 7 grains of sand left in comparison to the mountain of suffering destroyed. So yeah, you can call yourself whatever you want, but the reality is, are you still liable to suffer? Are you still liable to not knowing escape from the areas of suffering internally? Are you still moved by the dukkha, afraid of dukkha? If the answer is yes, if the answer is I don't know, if the answer is maybe, means you are, which means you're not a sotapanna. So that's why we often keep insisting on that clear division. You're either puthujjana, you're either sotapanna.
So, and you were saying also that from a puthujjana's point of view, the sotapanna is like an arahant.
Yes, yeah,
that's what
exactly. Yeah, because if you as a puthujjana think you are practicing the Dhamma, means you're implying that you know what Dhamma is. Yet the Buddha said the knowledge of what Dhamma is begins with sotapanna. So you can't have it both ways. So you either don't know what Dhamma is, means you're not a sotapanna, or you know what Dhamma is, means you're a sotapanna. But you can't say, I'm not a sotapanna and I know what Dhamma is, which is a reference point to the efforts in my practice. That's how I know I'm progressing. So that doesn't mean that whatever you do is wrong, but means that can only be known as right in hindsight after you get the right view, after you become a sotapanna. Like the simile I told you before. Imagine you're in prison. All it matters is whether you're imprisoned or you're free, you escaped. So the efforts you do in prison towards the escape will be the efforts of escape only after you escaped. Because if you haven't escaped, even if you spend 20 years digging a tunnel, you're still prisoner. So that's the point here. Like, not that your efforts are useless, but unless you're a sotapanna, they are useless. Because you haven't escaped. When your life comes to the end, it's not measured by, what's waiting for you. It's not measured by how hard you tried, or whether you tried or not. It's measured whether you escaped or not. And saying, if the guards catch you or you die before you escaped the prison, all of your effort basically was useless, because you remained a prisoner. So that's what I mean. It's when we insist on this black and white division, when I insist on the black and white division, is so that you will always maintain the context of the goal where it matters. Because it doesn't matter if you thinned out the wall of the prison this much or this much. What matters is on which side of the wall you are. Because if you die, even if there is just 1 inch of wall left, well, you die the prisoner. Which means now you're done. Because you are on a limited time. You're not going to live forever, and not your every next rebirth will head towards Nibbana. Who knows? And more likely than not, it won't. So the chance you have now to be aware of the possibilities of escape and the effort towards the escape to make, it's a limited time. As I said, the guards might just bust in and catch you, and you're done, and they'll move you to another prison. But you trying or ignoring the fact that you're still a prisoner so that you can kind of give more value to your efforts of escape is a foolish thing to do, because you have no reference of the escape. You might have been digging the wall for 20 years practicing the Dhamma, but you don't know if there is another 200 meters of that wall. You don't know because you haven't escaped. So it's wishful thinking to think that without having escaped the prison, your efforts are bringing you closer to the escape. Only once you escape the prison, when you look back, you can see, yes, such and such efforts brought me closer to the escape, and hence I escaped. But until you escaped, you should not be entertaining the notion of I am closer to the escape, because you might not be, and you don't know whether you are or not. As simple as that. And that's exactly puthujjana, sotapanna. Not that everything puthujjana does is wrong, but until he becomes a sotapanna, he should pretty much regard everything with a pinch of salt and as might be wrong or insufficient. And it's, again, you don't lose anything, by the way, except maybe a bit of your complacency. If you keep that in mind, that only escape matters, that's the ultimate goal. So it's going to be more unpleasant to you to maintain that context. But because of that unpleasant context, you will have the direction to strive for, the measure to achieve. But if you say, oh, well, that's, tall order, all it matters is trying your best, that's just what prisoner will tell himself, who is aware that he's still a prisoner and he cannot bear that reality. So then he just tries to mask it and make it more of that which it isn't. It doesn't matter, the escape. No, it matters. The escape matters. If it doesn't matter, you wouldn't have tried to escape in the first place. If becoming a sotapanna doesn't matter, you wouldn't have even read the suttas and tried to practice it. If the escape from suffering doesn't matter, you wouldn't have been doing this already. You wouldn't be saying that it doesn't matter, because you know that it matters. So yeah, it's black and white, very black and white. And it's good for you to think that it's black and white. Because if you start making it grey, you'll be a complacent prisoner who likes to think that he's getting there with the escape, but in reality he has no idea how much of that wall is left for him to dig, and whether he's going to get caught or not and be sent to a dungeon or something where he cannot dig through.
Yes, plenty of time.
Yeah, it's tied with that notion of basically forgetting that you are on a borrowed time. And your practice now, unless has passed that threshold of Sotapanna, as the Buddha would say, unless you pass the threshold of Sotapanna, no amount of your practice then is guaranteed they will be picked up and taken again. You have no idea, because you might spend eons in the realm that will be completely unsuitable for any practice of Dhamma. So, from the point of view of eons, of actions performed in the realms that are completely against the Dhamma, 20 years of your practice and meditation is nothing. So keep that in mind and don't lose perspective, and don't try and water down the threshold of success, which is Sotapanna. That's why we say basically Sotapanna or higher is the only ones that should not be fearing rebirth and what's next, because at most they have a limited time before they fully free their mind. So it's a win-win. The only thing you lose is complacency here and now. So if you are making effort, great, and also think of this as a threshold, even better. You're going to make twice as much effort then. But if you try to argue against this point, it's only because you want to compensate for the lack of effort, or basically try to pretend that you somehow know what the escape is, while simultaneously admitting that you haven't escaped.
You hope the escape is
exactly. It's too unpleasant to admit that you are a prisoner. But that's kind of the necessary step, because that will then make you really want to escape.